Ahead and call the meeting to order. And Marty, I believe this is a work session, isn't it? So we need to get a motion.
I think it's actually set up as a presentation.
Yeah.
It is?
So you
Okay.
don't have to do anything.
Very well. First thing on the agenda, presentation of the fiscal year 2022 proposed county budget. You're up, sir.
Good evening. I can't believe we're standing up here talking about fiscal year 2022. Just the other day, I was working on fiscal year 7. Dear honorable members of the Board of Supervisors, what a difference a year makes. In last year's budget message, I shared with you that I am confident that this proposed budget continues to keep the county focused on the future. Unfortunately, shortly after my budget message was presented to you last year, the county began to experience the effects of the COVID pandemic, which resulted in a series of actions and reactions that none of us could have anticipated in early March 2020. Over the past year, while our county staff have worked diligently to focus on the future, many days we have been grateful to simply get through the day. As we turn our attention to a new fiscal year, I've shared with our leadership team that we need to see the horizon and refrain from spending our days looking at the sidewalk. I actually heard that in a conference a while back, that so many of us this past year have just been trying to look at the next steps ahead of us. We haven't been looking out at the horizon. I thought that was pretty good. We must strive to see the future that is ahead of us. While some daily challenges are most likely here to stay, hopefully not wearing these masks, I'm hopeful in the months ahead we will again be able to see the future so that we can return to focusing on the future as soon as possible. In the spirit of seeing the future, it gives me pleasure to present the proposed 2021-2022 fiscal year budget for your review and consideration. The proposed budget for all funds is $211 million and represents an increase of $1.7 million, which is actually only 0.8% over the current fiscal year. Excuse me. The proposed budget allows the county to continue to invest in our human and capital resources, in our public schools operations and capital needs, and in our public safety operations. The fiscal 2022 year budget, as proposed, provides essential funding for continuation of our services to our citizens and businesses, maintains the programs and activities of our various departments, and allows for investment in our capital and human resources needed to perform our jobs safely and efficiently. The budget also provides us with the opportunity to evaluate ways to provide our programs and activities in a more efficient and effective manner in the future. With the proposed fiscal year 2022 budget, $89.6 million is provided from federal, state, and other designated funds. The remaining funds of $121.4 million represent county dollars not designated for a specific purpose, including projected growth of $1.2 million. When the fiscal year 2021 budget was approved last April, much uncertainty surrounded national, state, and local economies due to the COVID pandemic. As a result, when that budget was adopted, $6.9 million of school operating funding was deferred and held as special contingencies in the general fund. This contingency has now been released and appropriated to the school operating fund. Proposed 2022 funding for the county's general fund, net of transfers to other funds, totals $53.5 million. This is a decrease of $6.1 million or 10.2% from the current fiscal year. Proposed funding for the school operating fund, net of transfers to other funds and adjustments for deferred dollars, totals $122 million, which is an increase from the current year of $8.2 million. However, after adjusting for the release of the deferral that I mentioned earlier, the proposed funding is an increase of $800,000 or 1.6% for the general fund and $1.3 million or 1.1% for the school operating fund. The proposed county budget also includes the debt service fund, the school nutrition fund, the transfer to the school capital fund, the transfer to the county capital fund, the transfer to the Economic Development Authority, and the Law Library Fund. I jumped numbers in my message because you're going to hear in our presentation in a few minutes all the details. For the 9th consecutive year, I recommend no increase in the real estate tax rate of 89 cents per $100 of evaluation. While some undesignated revenue categories, primarily the sales tax and interest income, are estimated to decrease by $1.1 million, real estate collections are estimated to increase by $1.7 million. Despite the effects of the pandemic, our local economy has remained resilient. This resilience, coupled with conservative fiscal management by this Board of Supervisors, has allowed the county to weather current fiscal challenges. We are fortunate to be able to maintain the same real estate tax rate for nearly a decade. The General Assembly enacted legislation in 2020 that gave counties the authority to levy a tax on the sale of cigarettes at a rate of up to 40 cents per pack. The legislation allows county to begin levying this tax on July 1st of this year. The proposed budget includes a levy of a cigarette tax in the amount of 30 cents per pack to be implemented as soon after July 1 as practical. If the board approves this, it'll probably take us several months to get the administrative issues addressed that we would need to be able to do to implement a tax. As this is a new revenue source for the county, we estimate that the proceeds from this tax for fiscal year 2022 are about $100,000. For fiscal year 2022, I recommend the board continue setting aside funds for the following capital and maintenance projects. For the school capital fund, I recommend we continue to earmark 2.5 cents of the real estate tax rate, which equates to $2.2 million for future school capital projects. For the fire and rescue capital fund, 1.5 cents of the real estate tax rate, or $1.3 million for fire and rescue equipment needs. And for the county capital fund, $2.3 million, which includes 1 cent of the real estate tax rate, as well as $1.4 million from other revenues for capital and maintenance projects. As we focus on the future, it is critical that the county continue to designate annual recurring dollars for critical long-term projects. With an ongoing designation of $2.2 million, dollars will accrue annually for the next priority school capital project. The $1.3 million for the fire and rescue capital fund will ensure that our volunteers are well equipped to provide high-quality service to our citizens. Other monies earmarked for the county capital fund provide dollars annually for the following: $425,000 for the Auburn Park project, which puts aside fund each year towards the development and future construction of that park. $210,000 for information technology infrastructure projects, which allow for technology needs to be addressed. $878,000, which is about 1 cent on the real estate tax rate, enables us to set aside $100,000 for future valley-to-valley trail projects, and also provides $778,000 each year for other future county projects, and $750,000 for county capital maintenance projects, which allow for proactive preventive maintenance and for handling large-scale building repairs or replacements. And just a footnote on that, I met with Scott Woodrum this afternoon, and we now have 3 buildings that we're having roof issues with. This building, the courthouse, which is not that old, but we're having some roof issues with the courthouse, and the Health and Human Services building on Pepper Street. So roofs aren't cheap. Of the $4.9 million in additional county funding requested by the schools for fiscal year 2022, I'm proposing new funding of $500,000 for the school operating fund, which represents 40% of the overall new revenue that we're projecting for the county's general fund. Although my recommendation does not fully fund the school's request for operating funds, it's important to note that the county has continued to increase local funding for the schools by over $8.4 million in the past 5 years for operations alone. We must continue to remind our state legislators that increased state funding for our schools, both for operations and for infrastructure, is critical to maintaining the high level of K-12 education that our county residents have come to expect. Skipping the next couple of charts on to page 5. With all the challenges of this past fiscal year, one thing has been crystal clear to me. Montgomery County is blessed to have many caring, dedicated, and knowledgeable employees who strive to provide outstanding services to our citizens and businesses each and every day. Even when faced with the challenges of the pandemic, our team of employees have been supportive, diligent, and flexible as we've navigated through this past year. With the small growth in new revenues that I've mentioned earlier, I'm very limited in what I'm able to recommend in terms of an increase in employee compensation. However, I propose an increase of 2% in compensation for all full-time and part-time classified employees effective July 1. For employees who have reached the top of their pay grade, I recommend a 2% one-time supplemental payment in lieu of a salary increase. Funding in the amount of $526,000 is included in the proposed budget to address this request, along with an additional $90,508 in funds to bring all positions in line with the proposed increase in the federal minimum wage, which will affect us on January 1, 2022. Of the $526,000 and the $90,508, the county has identified over $446,000 in our current budget in our base savings to support approximately 85% of the cost of the 2% proposed compensation increase. The proposed budget contains approximately $61,000 in additional funding to address additional administrative support for the organization. With the retirement of Carol Edmonds last December, Angie Hill has assumed the role of Assistant County Administrator, Chief Financial Officer, and she's doing an outstanding job in her new role. Angie has also assumed a regional leadership role with the fiscal management of the coronavirus relief funds that the county received for both the county and the New River Valley Public Health Task Force. The current fiscal year budget contains a position for a management and policy analyst, which has remained unfilled. However, it has become obvious in recent years that we need additional managerial support in the county administration area to address the myriad of policies, state and federal initiatives and mandates, grant opportunities, and operational issues that arise each day. My proposed budget recommends converting the management and policy analyst position that's currently vacant to an additional assistant county administrator position who will assist Angie and me with the oversight and management of the county's 12 operating departments, support for 5 constitutional officers, working with 3 outside agencies that we deal with daily that have separate governing boards, our 4 court functions, our 10 separate fire and rescue agencies, and 46 other outside agencies. As we focus on the future, additional administrative support will allow us to become more efficient in managing this multitude of priorities and provide a higher level of services to our citizens. And I might also add, we'll also provide a higher level of service to our own internal customers as well. As we enter into the new fiscal year, I will continue to evaluate the county's managerial structure and will be recommending additional actions in the months ahead to continue to strengthen the county's organization for the future. My budget proposal includes the 4th year of support in the amount of $500,000 for New River Community College to provide the Accessing Community College Education Program. These funds allow Montgomery County High School graduates to continue tuition-free education at NRCC with their commitment to provide service hours to the community in return. The county has supported students through this program with a total of $1.75 million to date. I'm thankful for the participation in the budget review process by the county's department directors, agency heads, and constitutional officers. I'm very fortunate to work with a team who understands the fiscal challenges that face local governments and who supports our fiscally conservative approach to budgeting. As occurs each year, requests for county funds far exceeded the resources available. Requests this year were no different and totaled $1.7 million in new funding, excluding compensation and fringe benefits. The county's department directors and constitutional officers were part of the review process for these budget requests and developed a ranking of the requests. Although not ranked by the leadership team, during the development of the annual budget, the county received requests for increased funds from agencies outside the local government totaling $465,254. The proposed budget provides a total of $2.8 million to the various outside agencies and organizations, some of which are mandated as the county is contractually or statutorily required to provide the funds. I'm extremely grateful for the staff members who work many hours to review, revise, and assemble the budget documents prior to this presentation each year. Without the leadership of Angie, Mark Magruder, Paul Kaiser, Susan Dickerson, this presentation would not be possible. Very special thanks go to Jen Harris and Durley Aguilar, who work their creative magic on the budget document, presentations, and information that is provided to our citizens to ensure that the county reflects our best efforts in communications. Just as an aside, Angie, Mark, and I talked on Friday. We were still crunching some things, pushing numbers to get things ready. Didn't see any way in the world we were going to have a budget book to give you tonight. Just didn't see how. They're here. County staff looks forward to reviewing the proposed budget information with you in more detail over the next few weeks. A joint meeting with the Montgomery County Public Schools Board is scheduled for Tuesday, March 16th to allow the superintendent to present the school board's fiscal year 2022 budget to the Board of Supervisors and to allow for discussion among the two governing bodies. A budget work session will be held during the board's regular meeting on Monday, March 22nd for the board to establish the advertised tax rate and the advertised budget in order to meet the required deadlines. The required public hearing on the proposed budget and tax rate are scheduled for a special Board of Supervisors meeting on Thursday, April 8th at 6 p.m. If all goes as planned, we ask that the board approve the proposed budget at a special Board of Supervisors meeting on Monday, April 19th. In conclusion, Montgomery County is a diverse and growing community, and its citizens demand a responsive, industrious, and steadfast county government. I believe this proposed budget provides for the capital, operations, and human resources needed to meet these demands and will keep our county focused on the future. I appreciate your continued support and your leadership. I know that the upcoming fiscal year will be another year of outstanding achievements for our county, and I welcome your comments and suggestions as we review the attached information in the days ahead. And with that, I'm going to turn the podium over to Angie, who's going to come up and give us a little more detail on some of the numbers that I went over. I'll try to clean my spot so I can put this out. I always hate being the first one to open the door. There it is. Because I can't.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ooh, thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, Mark, Montgomery spelled wrong on the side.
Mine's still warm. Like literally hot off the press.
White, I could turn him.
Good evening. Before I start, I really want to just tell you how excited and thankful I am to be able to present the proposed budget to you tonight in my new role as the Assistant County Administrator. I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to so many more opportunities with this group and with our employees here at the county. And also, as Craig mentioned, we shared with you last week that we weren't going to have a book ready. Well, we have one. I've been caring for a close family member who's been hospitalized for the last 2 weeks, so I haven't been able to contribute even a fraction of the input that Carol and I would both provide to Mark and the rest of the team during these weeks. And I'm just so grateful and thankful for Craig's support during this time. And I just want to let you know what a great group of employees we have at the county. That is why you have a book tonight. We can always depend on Jen Harris for her input and for Durley Aguilar to produce such a very professional document and share this information with you so well. This year, we wrecked a couple of Durley's weekends. She just stepped up and worked hard, many hours to get this document ready. Paul Kaiser and Susan Dickerson, as Craig said, also helped Mark prepare the document. But really, the person who stepped up and led this team through this process was Mark. Mark, I really cannot thank you enough for the commitment and the many, many, many hours spent on nights and weekends to get us here tonight. If it hadn't been for Mark, not only would you not have a printed document tonight, I don't know if we'd be presenting a budget to you. So, Mark, thank you. And I really appreciate our whole awesome team. Okay, I made it. I had to write that down. Oh. So, as we explain to you, I think every year, it's a good refresher though, and for people who might be watching and don't exactly understand our budget process, the way we develop our budget is we start with base budget targets. Those are based on the cost of the updated personnel for positions and benefits. Some years we have benefit increases, usually not benefit decreases. We've been very fortunate to not have a health insurance increase again this year, and also we did not have a VRS increase this year, so that was very beneficial. For operation and maintenance, those are capped from one year to the next. And for capital outlay, we remove one-time only items from the base target. Requests more than the base are shown as addenda. And before we would recommend funding to you for an addenda request, the base budget is challenged. And I'm going to give you some examples as we go through of challenges to the base budget that help us be able to fund more items with the same dollars. In fiscal year 22 budget requests, the total requests, which includes the requests that we received from all the departments and the compensation recommendation, totaled just over $2 million. As you know, the schools have not formally submitted their request to us, but what was presented to the school board was $4.9 million increase from the county. That leaves us with a grand total of just over $7 million. And as Mark shared with us in an earlier presentation on a different week, the new undesignated revenue that we have this year is $1.2 million. We do continue to look at that number and adjust it as we find news or sources that weren't available, things that change. The difference between the request and the amount of money that we had to provide is $5.9 million. And to fully fund all of those requests, we would need an increase in the real estate tax of 7 cents. Another important thing to note is 1 cent on the real estate tax equals just over $878,000. That number changes every year because the assessed value of our property changes, and so then the value that we receive from 1 penny of real estate changes as well. 1 penny of real estate tax. The transfers to capital for 22 remain the same. For county capital, we include 1.5 cents of the real estate tax, which is $1.3 million for fire and rescue. We have 1 cent of the real estate tax that are for future projects, including $100,000 for the Valley to Valley Trail. $425,000 for the Auburn Park project that is ongoing, $210,000 for information technology needs, because there are always ongoing technology needs that should be funded through the capital fund, and then $750,000 for county capital maintenance projects. We also set aside each year 2.5 cents of the real estate tax rate, which is $2.2 million this year for future school capital needs. When we set those funds aside for school capital and county capital needs, they can be for cash-funded projects, or they could possibly go to debt service in the future. To summarize the proposed budget, we've shown on this slide the fund totals, and I'll just scan over those because you guys can read those yourselves. But the general fund increases about $840,000. The school operating fund increases about $1.3 million. School nutrition is projected to decrease about $600,000. The two school and county capital transfers are the changes in the penny value. The $49,472 represents the change in the penny value. And then the other categories remain the same. The new undesignated dollars that the budget includes for school funding is $500,000, combined with the $49,000 I spoke of for school capital, which brings us to a total of $549,000. Additionally, from the transfer to debt service, that is split between debt for the county and debt for the schools. In the current year that we're talking about, 22, the school debt service is increasing and the county's debt service is decreasing. So rather than add funds, we shifted county funds that had covered county debt service to the school debt service of about $800,000. So the total for the schools is $1.3 million. Again, not all of those are new. Part of them are shifted from the county to the schools. And the new dollars for county recommendations are $641,000, and then the penny change for the county capital is $49,000. Now we'll review a few charts with you. Those are easier to see in your book, I think, than they are on the screen or in your handout, but they show a big picture view of where our funds come from. And as you can see, 42% of our funds come from designated funds. Those are state and federal dollars primarily, and every year that shrinks a little bit, and that requires the other categories to meet more of the need for the total budget. So in the 22 budget, 37% of our budget is being funded by the real estate tax rate, and 42% is being funded by designated dollars, with personal property being the next largest category. This slide shows where we spend the dollars in total, and as you can see, the total of all school funds represent about 61% of the total budget. The general fund represents 25% of the total budget. Debt service for schools is 10% of the total, and debt service for the county is 2%. This breaks down the proposed budget for the general fund a little bit further. It includes education because that's the transfer from the county general fund to the schools. That's by far the largest category, as you can see, with that being 40%. 17% of the funding goes to debt service, and 14% goes to public safety. Of the new undesignated revenue of $1.2 million, 52% is allocated to the 9 areas in the general government. Those areas include the county departments, the constitutional officers and their departments, agencies that have separate boards, court functions, fire and rescue, and 46 outside agencies. The next slide is familiar as well. It shows the funding that the county provides to the school for the past 10 years. And as you can see from 21 to 22, it is increasing $500,000. That's just for the school operating fund. As I said, $500,000 is proposed in county dollars for the school operating fund. We will shift $800,000 from county debt service to school debt service. We will increase county dollars to meet the school capital transfer to provide $1.3 million for school items. As far as county funding is concerned, this is an illustration of how we challenge the base. When we started talking about the budget, we knew that it was important that we appreciate our employees and try to provide something to them, but we didn't have a lot of money to start with, so we had to figure out if we would be able to do that. And we identified base savings of more than $446,000. That was one-time items, staff turnover, those kinds of things. And also we, this year for the first time, are paying some of our health clinic cost from our health insurance fund. Our health insurance fund, we have been fortunate, as I said earlier, that our rates haven't increased. And so we were able to shift those costs to the health insurance fund, which freed up dollars to provide this proposed salary increase. And the only cost from the new money is $79,634. Again, another example is related to jail medical expenses. In the past, the jail had a doctor that provided medical services to the jail, but due to the COVID environment and all of the other changes of the world, that's not a feasible option anymore. And so the sheriff's office requested that we contract those services out to an independent party, which is a really good idea to do. And in working with us to figure out how to do that, they agreed that savings could be achieved by reducing some of their employees and using those savings to offset the increase for the expense. So the total expense is $280,000, but it's only going to require just over $16,000 of new money because we have taken some other base savings to offset that cost. Another large expense that the county is going to have to incur that we were not able to fund with base savings is tipping fee increases at the Solid Waste Authority. We anticipate those will be about $150,000. This slide highlights the other areas that we are including for funding, which are all smaller dollar amounts, but still need to be met. The first one Craig referred to in his message, the minimum wage increase that's effective January 1st of 22, will require just under $91,000 of additional funding, and the federal legislation is going to require that to increase over the next few years. So they're stepping the minimum wage rate up over the next few years, so that will be recurring in different amounts, of course, but you'll see that again. About $84,000 is for information technology software increases. The cost to convert the management and policy analyst position to an assistant county administrator is about $61,000. $54,000 are included for outside agency funding needs. And again, we did that as we have in the past. We funded the same agencies that we have funded in the past, and we have tried to meet those in a pro rata manner compared to the other jurisdictions that fund those agencies. The state is requiring upgrades to make sure the voting equipment is secure, and that's going to cost about $43,000. About every 3 or 4 years, we add funds to the budget to cover the increase of audit fees and other professional services that just go up from year to year. We try to put funds in the budget so that we don't have to ask you for those every single year. We try to project forward so we could just do it periodically, but this is the year that we need to increase that, and it's about $30,000. And then you're all familiar with the Wireless on Wheels project that we paid for with CARES money. We paid for the actual devices themselves, but in order to maintain them and provide internet or cell service with them, we need about $24,000 to be added to the budget. And then our financial policies require that we set aside a certain portion of our general fund in general contingencies in case something occurs that we need additional funding. And so in order to maintain that financial policy, we have included an increase of $10,000. And again, as Craig mentioned, the next steps are the presentation of the school budget to you on the March 16th meeting. The calendar also includes March 22nd to establish the advertised tax rate and budget. April 8th to have the public hearing on the budget and the tax rate. And then April 19th is the scheduled date to adopt the budget and the tax rate. And that is an important date for the treasurer, that we set the tax rate that day so that she can get the tax tickets out in a timely manner. Usually at this point, we do ask you if you have questions, but we know that it's a lot to digest, and if you have some, we can try to answer them, or if you want to share them with us later, you can let Craig or me know, and we will reply to the whole board so that everybody gets the same information.
What say you? You got some questions now? All right. Well, if you've got some questions, we'll just take them one at a time, I guess, Angie.
I have a lot of questions
I only have two.
that are, so I'll take my 10 minutes and see how that goes for everybody. So, you don't have to get down, but Craig,
Supervisor Bowen, I don't know if we got that much time. We have another meeting to attend.
5 minutes, 6 minutes, 5 minutes,
How about 4 minutes?
4 minutes.
He's going
Ready,
to set
go.
the timer.
So you don't have to get down because I've got plenty of questions for you, but in your document on page 6, you talk about 2.8 million going to outside agencies, and some of which are mandated as the county is contractually or statutorily required. I would particularly like to know what is statutorily required. I don't know if it's actually like an asterisks or something like that says, oh, the community health center, we have to send or not.
We can provide you with a list of those.
And then in the presentation, Angie, page 7. Where does the cigarette tax show up on that?
It's just,
Or doesn't it?
I have to hold this up. It's in, other, in the 2%.
Okay. About how much of the 2% is it?
I don't, it's $100,000. I don't know what the,
Okay.
is that what you want
It's
to know?
about, yeah, a quarter of it. Uh-huh. And then the 42% that's designated, I'm not sure if I'm asking this question correctly, about how much of that is for schools?
I'll have to get that for you.
Okay. On page 9, it says debt service, 17%. Is that us and the schools, or is that just us? Page 9, the 17.
It's both of us.
Okay,
There are other funds that go to offset the debt service, but that covers both the county and schools.
okay. Page 11, the increase in the schools is just short of 1%. Am I doing my math correct?
I don't know right off.
We'll move on to page 13. I'd like to know how much is in our health insurance fund and what is required for our health insurance fund and what we try to target for our, because I know there are 3 different numbers or more.
Yes.
If you would. And just to use an example, when you give us that answer, if 3 people have bypass surgery in 1 year, how does that affect?
We do have stop loss insurance
Okay,
that we
great.
pay premiums for, so there is a cap per
Okay,
year.
awesome. You, also on page 13, you mentioned how many employees were reduced in the jail and/or sheriff's office. Do you know
2.
that?
And the
And-
doctor.
and the doctor, which was a
It
contract
was,
position.
right.
Yeah.
And then the question about the tipping fee, doesn't that all stay in the solid waste authority? We don't use any of that, right?
We have
Would-
to pay the solid waste authority a fee,
Mm-hmm.
but to,
For the convenience sites.
right, for the convenience sites when
Mm-hmm.
we take our solid waste to the solid
Oh,
waste
I
authority,
see.
we have to pay for that, so that's our fee that we pay them.
Okay, I gotcha. So on page 14, this is my last set of questions. I'd like to have further explanation about the contingencies and where that all fits. I'd like to understand the state security upgrade requirements for the voting equipment. The minimum wage, we all talk about minimum wage now, but this is what passed before, I expect.
That's right.
And I'd like to see the schedule, just so that people have that as a frame of reference.
Yes.
And then lastly, the 60,952 is in addition to the empty position that you haven't filled.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Those are all my questions. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, well, I think that's going to pretty much conclude. Did you have anything else to present? Did Mark have?
I got one question. Just quick.
Okay, go ahead.
Quick. On this budget, can we take that cigarette tax increase out of the budget, vote on it separate? I'd hate to turn down the budget over that one thing.
As the board discusses the budget over the next couple of weeks, if there's a consensus to remove it, we can remove it. Yes, sir.
And you have to approve the cigarette ordinance anyway separately at a later date.
Separately,
Yeah, at a later date, yeah.
so it can be taken out.
Well, I think what they've done is they've said, hey, we're anticipating, or we're going to propose that the board consider a cigarette tax, and this is how much money we can make of the 100,000 they mentioned, so that's in the budget. But if the board has no interest in pursuing that, then that 100,000 would then come out of the budget, correct? But you'd have to adopt an ordinance later on if you do intend to put a cigarette tax unrelated to the budget, it'd be after.
To enact it, right.
But if you decided before you adopted the budget that you did not want to, if the board as a whole decided that you didn't want to have the cigarette tax, we would just adjust it like we do as we go through the budget and add or take things out. We could do that before you voted. Sure.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
we have reached our time, so this meeting's adjourned. Go to the next one.
Todd, that 100,000's coming out of the Auburn Park.